Your rosemary looks fine right now. That's the problem. Because rosemary doesn't die in August. It gets sentenced in August, and the execution happens in February. The plant goes into winter looking healthy, and somewhere around late winter, it turns gray and brittle from the inside out. And by March, you're pulling it out of the ground. And every single gardener says the same thing. It was a hard winter. It almost certainly wasn't. I'll show you the research that proves it, because the real killer is something you're doing in the next 4 weeks, and it's being done with the best intentions in the world. There are 8 mistakes people make with rosemary in August. If you're making even one, you probably won't find out until winter is over. Let me walk you through all 8, and let's start with the one nobody thinks of as a mistake at all. Mistake 1. Feeding it. August feels like the month to give plants a boost before the season winds down. With rosemary, it's the worst possible thing you can do. And here's the mechanism. Nitrogen makes soft growth. That's all it does. And soft growth is exactly what cannot survive a frost. So when you feed rosemary in late summer, you force the plant to push out tender new shoots at precisely the moment it should be doing the opposite, slowing down, hardening its tissue, and getting ready for cold. You're working directly against the plant's own cold hardiness program. Stop all nitrogen-heavy feeding by mid-August. And honestly, after the first year in the ground, stop feeding rosemary altogether. Too much fertilizer burns the roots, yellows the leaves, and strips the aroma out of them, which defeats the entire point of growing it. Mistake 2. Pruning too late. Same mechanism, different tool. When you cut rosemary, you trigger it. It responds with fresh green growth, and that growth needs time to mature before cold weather arrives. Colorado State University's horticulture extension puts the rule at 4 to 6 weeks minimum before your first frost. Other growers push it to 6 or 8 weeks to be safe. So work it out. Look up your average first frost date and count back 6 weeks. For most people, that lands in late August or the first days of September. That's your last day with shears in hand. Cut in October and you send a plant covered in soft new shoots straight into freezing weather. And do not prune rosemary in winter. It's dormant, the wounds don't heal, and you've opened it up to disease at the worst moment of the year. If you miss the August window, the answer isn't to rush it in September. The answer is to leave the plant alone and do your shaping in mid-March instead. A missed prune costs you tidiness. A late prune can cost you the plant. Mistake 3. Cutting into the gray wood. This is the mistake that kills rosemary in a single afternoon, and it's worth understanding exactly why. Because rosemary is less forgiving here than almost anything else in your garden, including lavender. Rosemary is a sub-shrub. Soft green growth on top, hard woody stems underneath, and the wood creeps upward every year. Once a branch has aged into that gray, bark-like wood, it has lost the ability to sprout again. And here's the detail most people never hear. Rosemary does not carry the reserve buds that let some other shrubs recover from a hard cut. Cut into dead gray wood, and there is nothing there to push new growth from. You get a bare stick permanently. So your rule is simple. Every single cut you make must leave green behind it. Cut to within about a centimeter of fresh green growth above the woody section. No deeper. Keep several sets of leaves below every cut, and never take more than 1/3 of the plant in one go. The exception is genuinely dead or diseased stems, which you remove right back to the base. Do it as a series of small cuts rather than one dramatic reshaping. You can always take more later. You cannot put it back. Mistake 4. Still watering it. August is hot, the plant looks dry, and the hose is right there. Understand what rosemary actually is. In its native Mediterranean range, it survives on thin, rocky soil under relentless sun, with almost no water at all from June through September. In that setting, it's nearly indestructible. In our gardens, it disappoints constantly. And in almost every case, the cause is too much water, not too little. Before I keep going, I put together a guide called the Mediterranean Garden Playbook. Plain English covering the exact soil pH every one of these plants actually wants, the drainage fixes that work in real clay, the pruning window for each variety, and a chapter on what doesn't work. Link is in the description. If it saves one plant, it paid for itself. Now let me get back to it. Established rosemary in the ground needs almost nothing in summer, and as autumn comes in, cut back further. Once temperatures start dropping consistently below 50 degrees Fahrenheit, reduce watering significantly. There's a line from the overwintering guides that's worth memorizing. A slightly stressed, drier plant is far more cold hardy than one saturated with moisture heading into a freeze. Dry rosemary survives winter. Wet rosemary does not. Mistake 5. Watering the leaves instead of the ground. If you do water, water at soil level, never over the top of the plant. Powdery mildew is rosemary's most common disease, and it shows up as a white, flowery coating on the upper surface of the leaves. It thrives in a very specific combination: warm, dry days followed by cool nights, plus poor air circulation, which is to say, late August and September. The good news is, it rarely kills a plant. It weakens it, stunts the affected shoots, and discolors the leaves. But it's not an emergency. The RHS actually advises home gardeners against routine fungicide use, citing limited effectiveness and the impact on beneficial insects. The fix is cultural, not chemical. More sun, more airflow, water at the base, and remove the worst affected material. Wet foliage is what gives the spores their opening, so stop creating it. Mistake 6. Planting it too close to everything else. Rosemary grows wild on coastal hillsides with constant wind moving through it. That airflow isn't incidental, it's part of why the plant works. In a crowded border, humidity sits in the foliage, evaporation slows, and you get the exact conditions that let fungal disease and root rot take hold. Space plants 2 to 3 feet apart. If yours is already hemmed in, this is the month to thin the dense interior branches, not to shorten the plant, just to open it up so air moves through the middle. That single job does more for winter survival than any covering you can buy. Mistake 7. Blaming the cold. Here's the belief I most want to break, because it lets the real killer walk free every single year. Yes, rosemary has genuine cold limits. It's reliably hardy in zones 8 to 10, and sustained temperatures below about 15 to 20 degrees. Fahrenheit will kill unprotected plants. That's real. But that is not what's killing most people's rosemary. The growing guides are blunt about it. The combination that kills most zone 6 and 7. Rosemary isn't cold alone. It's cold roots in wet soil. More rosemary dies from wet, frozen roots than from cold air, and the combination of frost and waterlogged ground is lethal even for varieties rated hardy for your zone. That reframes everything. Your rosemary isn't dying because your winter was harsh. It's dying because it spent that winter with its feet in water, and the freeze finished a job the drainage started. Which is why August matters so much. Right now, you can still do something about it. Get the plant onto a mound or a raised bed. Work grit into the soil around it, and make sure water actually leaves that spot instead of sitting in it. In February, you can do nothing at all. Mistake 8. Leaving it completely alone. The slowest mistake, and the most common. Skip the annual trim and rosemary doesn't die. It just goes progressively woody. Sparse and bare on top, hardened gray stems below, needles dropping, and less green each season. The flavor goes with it. Woody rosemary tastes noticeably worse than a well-maintained plant. Given proper care, rosemary lives 10 years easily and often well past 20, growing into a substantial head-high bush where winters are mild. Left to go woody, it declines into a brittle tangle of dead sticks long before that. And if yours is already there, be realistic. You rejuvenate a woody rosemary slowly, over seasons, always leaving green. If it's mostly bare gray wood with a fringe of leaves on top, hard pruning won't save it. There's nothing left to sprout from. Take cuttings from the green you do have, and start a replacement while you still can. Everything here comes back to one idea. Rosemary is a dry hillside plant. Everything that goes wrong with it comes from treating it like a garden plant. Feeding it, watering it, tucking it in, tidying it late. Every one of those kindnesses makes it softer and wetter going into the exact season where soft and wet is fatal. Lean soil, sharp drainage, air moving through it. No food after mid-August, no water once it cools, and one honest cut finished 6 weeks before your frost. Go out and look at yours this evening. Find where the green ends and the gray begins, and check whether water sits where it's planted. Those two things decide whether you're eating from that plant in 5 years.